Hi there, it's Patty here from Calgary Arts Development. I want to welcome everybody to our Commitment to Equity Town Hall. And today's session, I'm really looking forward to as we are welcoming members of the Cultural Instigators who are going to tell us more about a project they're initiating called Bringing Truth to Power. Before we begin, we just have a few items to go over. In particular, for those of you who would like to access the ASL interpreters, we just want to be sure that for those of you who want to access it, that you're able to see and pin the interpreters before we get started with all of today's proceedings. So Najeli is our technical person. She's waving, and if you're having any difficulties at all, and that goes for anybody, please reach out to Najeli, and she will assist you any way she can. Did I say bringing truth to power again? I'm so sorry. It is bringing power to truth. I always get that mixed up. Thank you very much for the correction. Okay, so before we begin our proceedings, I would like to call upon my colleague Sherry, who will offer us up some things to keep in mind during our time together today. Over to you, Sherry.
Thank you, Patty. This is Sherry speaking. Thanks for having me here today with you all. I'd like to review a few details about our Zoom setup and our group agreements for today's event. As Patty mentioned, Najeli is running the event for us today on the tech side. So if you have any technical questions or concerns or issues throughout today's event, please privately chat with her and she will be able to help you out. There are two ASL interpreters with us today who will be spelling each other off. They are Ava Hawkins and Deborah Russell. Thank you so much to both of them for being here. If you require a multi-pin ability in order to pin those interpreters, please message Najeli and she can set that up for you. We request that once we get going, our audience turns off their cameras unless they are speaking or asking a question to ensure that the speakers and the interpreters remain visible throughout the event. You can hide your non-video participants using the 3-dot menu in the upper corner of your video screen once you turn your camera off. And if you're speaking, could you please remember to introduce yourself before you begin so that we're able to acknowledge who is speaking each time. For today, we are using a transcription app called Otter AI. You'll see a box, a red box at the top corner of your screen. If you would like to use it, you can click there. If you prefer to use the Zoom subtitles, you can click the live transcript button on the bottom of your Zoom screen. This meeting is being recorded for future reference and to share with folks who weren't able to make this timing work to join us live. When we release the recording, we'll include an accurate transcription with the recording. If you've joined us before, you'll know that Calgary Arts Development uses group agreements to set shared expectations and a commitment to safety and bravery in the spaces that we occupy together. Those agreements can be found in the instructions document that is being posted in the chat right now. And we're also going to bring attention to the group agreements outlined by Adrienne Mari Brown in her book, Emergent Strategy. Helen will put the link to those agreements in the chat as well. Those include the following: listen from the inside out or listen from the bottom up. The feeling in your gut matters. Engage tension, don't indulge drama. Use the WAIT principle, W-A-I-T. Why am I talking? Make space, take space. And this is a post-ableist adaptation of step up, step back. It's used to help balance the verbose, so using more words than are needed, with the reticent, which is not revealing your thoughts or your feelings readily. Explore confidentiality, use confidentiality, take the lessons and leave out the details. Be open to learning. Be open to someone else speaking your truth. Try building, not selling. So when you speak, converse, don't pitch. Use yes and both and. Value the process as much as, if not more than, you value the outcomes. Assume best intent, attend to impact, and remember self-care and community care. So pay attention to your bladder, pay attention to your neighbors. In addition to the group agreements, I also want to recognize that asking people to share in this space is a request that requires emotional labor and vulnerability. And Calgary Arts Development commits to the promise that there will be no retribution against people for the stories or perspectives that they share. We ask that all participants commit to the same. Any participants who use harmful or disrespectful language or who are actively disregarding the group agreements will be asked to leave the town hall. And if they choose not to leave, they will be removed. So today, Taylor Poitras's role is to monitor the chat and the conversation as an active bystander. Taylor, if you could turn on your camera, introduce yourself so that people can find you and share a little bit more about this role today.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Taylor Poitras. Please feel free to private chat with me at any time in today's town hall if you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, if you see that a participant is using harmful or offensive language, or if you feel that the group agreements or the accountable space guidelines are not being respected in any way. Part of my role today as an active bystander is to help ensure that we are collectively adhering to the group agreements, and any participants who break those agreements will be contacted directly by myself and, if necessary, removed from the discussion. So yes, I'm available here. I've labeled myself as Cala, Taylor Poitras, active bystander, so you can search me in the chat or in the participants area. And I encourage everyone to also be an active bystander in life and in these spaces, but as CADA's staff and us hosting this space, it's really important that we have someone dedicated to trying to ensure that this space remains safe and brave. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Taylor. This is Sherry speaking again. Just a few more things. There will be time for questions after our invited guests share their thoughts with us. If you'd like to speak, please open the participants list, which is at the bottom of your screen. And at the bottom of that list, you'll see a raised hand. You can also indicate through the chat that you would like to share through the typed text there. You can use the three-dot menu on your screen to update your name and your pronouns if you wish. Leslie Hinger from Calgary Arts Development will be collecting questions from the chat box and watching for those raised hands. We'll try to get to as many people as possible in this short time. And again, if you have any questions or challenges with technology or accessibility, please let Najeli know. So now I'd like to call on my colleague, Sable Sweetgrass, to start us off in a good way. Sable?
I don't think Sable is with us as of yet. So Patty, I wonder if you might take this on.
Absolutely. Oki Natanako Mr. Mokisamyaki. Hello. In Blackfoot, I just shared with you my Blackfoot name that I was recently gifted this summer as a tremendous honor. Mr. Mokisamyaki stands for Two Standing Headdress Woman. Please excuse the puppies barking in the background. I am actually speaking with you from the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Semiahmoo, Katsi, Kwikwetlem, Kwantlen, Kwakiut, Musqueam, and Tsawwassen First Nations that is now known as Surrey, British Columbia. I have been working out here for the last couple of weeks, and it's been a great pleasure to share in and steward the land from this part of Turtle Island. All of you I know are, or many, I think most of you, as I look at the participants list, are sharing in today's call from my home territory, which is the original land of the Blackfoot people, the Nitsitapi, comprised of the Piikani, the Kainai, and the Siksika First Nations. Also, we have other nations of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina and the Ayarhe Nakota people, comprised of the Bears Paw, Wesley, and Chiniki First Nations, and of course, the Métis people of Alberta Region 3. I will come home this weekend, and I will look forward to coming home and again, taking my place in the circle in Mohkinstsis and being with all of you there again. I think it's been an interesting time. Yesterday, I had the great pleasure again of speaking with an elder who works with us from the Kainai Nation, Sakokato. And many of you, some of you were involved in that conversation, and he shared with us that recent events in Mohkinstsis at Nose Hill Park in particular resulted in the vandalism of a sacred and ceremonial site out at Nose Hill Park. And he reminded us that when these instances and occurrences happen that might sadden us or anger us, that it is on us to find the positive and to look for ways to make this a good day when these instances happen. And I think that in thinking about that conversation that I had the pleasure of being a part of, it reminded me, or I thought about today's conversation that will be guided by members of the Cultural Instigators as they share with us a really extraordinary project that they have originated and are underway with, called Bringing Power to Truth. And similarly, I think many of the questions and the conditions that the Cultural Instigators are addressing through this work are ones that I know can be very difficult to face and to confront and to share more broadly. And I applaud the instigators, and I am so thrilled that you have all agreed to be a part of our conversation today in the circle. And on that note, I would like to hand over to Riel Manywoons to lead us through this conversation with her colleagues today. Over to you, Riel.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Apologies if there's noise in the background. My son's in school right now. My name is Riel Manywoons. I am from Tsuut'ina Nation on my mother's side. On my dad's side, he is from Nakathli territory, which is in central interior BC. He belongs to the Frog Clan. He's descendant of Dene. Tsuut'ina is also descendant of Dene. And then my grandmother was a Good Eagle from Siksika, so I'm also part Blackfoot. Yeah, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you. I'm a cultural instigator with the Indigenous Spiral. And I'm just going to sort of like guide everybody through today's presentation. Yeah, and I'm actually going to introduce jaqs, who is going to speak about the history to how we've come to be at this point.
Hello, my name is jaqs Gaius and my parents are from the islands of Panay and Leyte, which are now colonially known as the Philippines. I was born in Jaqs, land of the Ganyagahaga, which is now colonially known as Montreal. And I'm part of the Cultural Instigators and also the Community Working Group, and I am very grateful to be a part of working with Patty and Taylor and the rest of CADA. Okay, I'm just gonna get this slideshow going here. Front, here we go. Yeah. Oh, so this project started out probably about last June in 2020, led and supported by JD Derbyshire and Cesar Cala. And this project started out with a discussion about how to deal with and address the impact of COVID on the artist community. So this is a timeline of how it came to be. So as you can see, on May 25th, 2020, was the murder of George Floyd, which launched the conversation to move into conversations around anti-racism and Black Lives Matter, and also speaking about how Indigenous rights are being impacted by all of the stress and the movement of what, how equitable spaces are being clearly defined by who's impacted the most. So June 2nd was when that first conversation happened, and then June, we had multiple conversations around that. July, more discussions around braver spaces, accountable spaces, which is how we lead these conversations. And then in August, there was an announcement by the city of Calgary to have a anti-racism capacity building grant, which we all, like the citizen artists participants who were in these chat and choose, began these brainstorming activities where we all shared ideas of what we'd like to see happen with the grants that we would be pitching. And originally it was going to be multiple grants, but to disrupt the funding system, to decolonize wealth, instead of having us all pitch $5,000, $10,000 grants, we decided to make a huge program, like as if we were one organization, even though the Cultural Instigators is not incorporated or even a registered society. And we were able to write this grant through Truck Contemporary Arts. And we built a budget of $250,000 and first just asked for 79 from the state of Calgary. I'll get to the funders in a second, but yeah, we were able to get all the funds that we asked for. And so then in January, this group of people of the Cultural Instigators was fully formed, where we started out with just a few when these conversations began. And then, February, the Black Led Spiral launched, and Wunmi Idowu will talk about that after. And then we had a hiring process for 3 coordinators. It was just the Cultural Instigators who were carrying the coordination of partnership agreements, just having meetings. Every week we have a meeting with the Cultural Instigators. So there are 4, I'll show, well, Riel will get to that. And then in August, the Indigenous Led Spiral and the Racial Led Spiral started our activities as well. And then September 21st, there was a chat and chew on, are you ready to hear the truth that every child matters? It was a day just before Treaty 7 Day, to discuss the lives lost and the impact of a continual genocide of people, like and how we can contribute to land back, and how we're shifting perceptions that have been programmed into many of the ways that we move and navigate spaces. And then we are now moving towards a grappling, which is to culminate in May 28th, after each spiral will continue on. Riel will get to that in a minute. So I'm going to talk about the funders next, where we have, there's a link in, thanks Helen. Helen just dropped the link in the chat for the September 21st chat and chew. So City of Calgary, we won $79,014 from the Anti-Racism Capacity Building Fund. Oops, very sensitive. And then Calgary Foundation, we submitted for the pandemic recovery, which we got 75,000, and then Calgary Foundation, 75,000. And then Calgary Council was another 75,000. I'm saying that too many times. And Calgary Arts Development also offered 25,000. So in total, it's 250,000. If I said 75,000 too many times, just it's 250,000. So these are our funders. Thank you, all of you. And then here are our partners. Since we wrote the grant through, we wrote the City of Calgary grant through Truck. We've dispersed the funds through USAE, the Urban Society for Aboriginal Youth, and Wezo Africa for both the Indigenous Led Spiral and the Black Led Spiral. And then Stride Gallery, Arian Kim was gracious enough to lead the grant writing for the Canada Council Innovation Sector Innovation Grant. And Inside Out Theatre is currently holding the funds from the Calgary Foundation for the Pandemic Recovery Grant and for the Racialized Led Spiral, which you will see in a moment. Okay, that's all I got. Over to you, Riel.
All right. So I think what I joined this Indigenous Spiral as a cultural instigator in April. I was invited by Kelli Morning Bull, who reached out to me through email and was saying, like, we've heard of work you've done and we'd like you to be a part of this project. And I was like, sure, this sounds interesting and exciting. And then so I jumped on and joined the meetings and just sort of contributed as an Indigenous woman from Tsuut'ina, and also as a mother, a person who is passionate about helping with the admin arts in the city of Calgary in regards to decolonization, in regards to inclusion, in regards to speaking my truth always. I think that's what I'm really well known for. And I think that this project here helps me to feel safe within that, which is one of the most powerful things I think about when I meet with these people. You know, I feel like I'm dedicated, I help with the hiring process. It's because it's a platform that for me as an Indigenous woman that I feel is super safe. So I think that's bringing power to truth is very much a good title for it. And then I wanted to describe or to explain this spiral sort of like circular thing. At first it was a penguin spiral, but then we sort of like, once we met and we discussed, we sort of like switched it to this sort of look, because for us, like for me, this is more of Indigenous sort of way. Like we gather in circle, we give thanks to the four corners. You know, the circular structure is very much a way that we view the seasons, we view life. Everything is sort of in a circular thing from a, you know, so you can see in the center, the Indigenous Led Spiral is in the center. And this is super important to us because I think that when we think about Canada and Canadians and everything that exists today is built upon this broken relationship with Indigenous people. I come from Nakasley, which is in BC, which is unceded territory. And though like there's no treaties, and I also belong to Tsuut'ina, which is treaty. So both relationships have been broken since the beginning, treaty, non-treaty. So, and now we see, you know, with, I just think that, you know, Canada has, there's just, they keep moving forward and there's not enough reflection. There's not enough, I guess, pause and like sort of like a truth to what has happened to Indigenous people and what continues to happen. And like basically Canada is hiding from the fact that, you know, this relationship is broken and they have, there's a lot that they have to do on their side for it to be sort of reconciled. I don't think reconciliation is anywhere near, like I think that we have platforms now, our truth is out there, but there's still a lot of work for Canada to do. So it's the center because that that broken relationship bleeds out into all the other spirals. So the Black Lead Spiral, the Racialized Led Spiral, and the rest of like sort of city of Calgary. So yeah, it's basically us like sort of always centering these discussions and making sure that like the last chat and chew we did was just super powerful for me. I think that, you know, we invited some Tsuut'ina elders. We had just really good discussion. And I think that's like, we can move ahead and sort of have this idea of what decolonization means or what reconciliation in the workplace means. But if we actually don't speak the actual truth and, you know, make those platforms and spaces safe for Indigenous people to speak their truth, we're not going to get anywhere. I think that yeah, I just think that we're like, there's an idea of how this relationship can grow better and be better. But until the hard truth of the colonial genocidal state is clear to everyone, and we demand better from our leadership, we will demand better from these companies that are, you know, very much leading the government in their direction, then nothing will ever be in, you know, in harmony, or nothing will be ever honorable for Canada. And I just wanted to say that. So I guess we can move to the next spiral. I mean, the next. So these are all the cultural instigators. And I must say that everyone looks really good in these photos. I really like this because we meet every week, but this is really good. So we have Kelli Morning Bull with the Indigenous Spiral, myself, Racialized Led Spiral, Jared, two young men with the Indigenous, Jared Tailfeathers also with the Indigenous. And then the Black Lead Spiral is Wunmi, Priscilla, Chantel, Omata. And then the Racialized is Pam and jaqs. We did recently hire the coordinators, so they're in the next slide, or we have. So we did recently do a hiring for sort of coordinators for each spiral based on our budget and based on, yeah, just someone who could take on more than what each of the cultural instigators could take on based on, you know, like we're involved in different things in our community. So we have Jasmine Piper as our Indigenous Led Spiral coordinator. Wunmi is the coordinator of the Black Lead Spiral. We have Chantel Palmer as the Racialized Led Spiral, and Alan Rosales as the overarching spiral coordinator. And I also want to shout out to JD and Cesar, who are continual support, who speak their truths and who hold that space as sort of like more of like elderly. Yeah, they are solid and they're always there to remind us of, you know, keeping that balance. That's what I think. Both of them, yeah, so just would like to give my thanks to them as well. And then if we can go to the next slide. So now we're going to get into each of the spirals. We have invited a rep from each spiral, sorry, to talk about, I'm still on the Halloween thing, each spiral rep to come and to discuss these questions based on our experiences, are what we've been doing in each spiral. So, sorry. So I guess we can start with the central spiral. And then I just encourage everyone, like I introduced you by your name, but if you were to come introduce yourself and your role and sort of like what you've done. So with the Indigenous Led Spiral, I'd like to invite Kelli Morning Bull to come and speak.
Awesome. Thanks, Riel. Hello, Dane Dada, Abawastech, Oki, Nistu, Ni Danago Bugaki, Nimochtutu, Bigani Siksika, Nitsatobi Mochginstis. I just want to welcome everybody today. Thanks, Patty, for the land acknowledgement. And I missed a bit of the beginning. I was had some tech issues. I just wanted to first off thank Calgary Arts Development for this opportunity to bring us together and to start looking at how we can create equitable and anti-racist spaces for people of color, Indigenous, and Black people that reside here in the Treaty 7 area, most specifically Mohkinstsis, Calgary, and to talk about first to take our own experiences, our own personal lived experiences, our own professional experiences, and try to bring those perspectives together to create harmony or a better place for us to all thrive and live together. One of the first things, we had a lot of conversations at the beginning of this whole entire Cultural Instigator group, and there was a lot of discussions around what we need to bring to the table, what we can bring, and for the Indigenous led spiral, that question of bringing power to truth. What is bringing power to truth? What are the things that we need that we could bring to the forefront here in the city of Calgary to help educate our non-Indigenous brothers and sisters to understand who it is and where we're coming from? A lot of it was historical context. That was sort of the common theme that we had recognized through our conversations in the beginning. And then as we broke out into our individual led spirals, that truth piece was really important. And for us, it was that historical cultural context of people who reside here in Treaty 7 area don't even know Treaty 7. They don't know the communities. They don't know that we are distinct in our own communities, in our own languages, that we have a history and that we have this beautiful culture that we could share but also help us to heal as we move forward in our journey. It was also really important to have representation from each of the communities, and one of the things that we had noticed in the beginning is we didn't have direct representation from Tsuut'ina. We had people that we can connect with, but it was just that it just made it more stronger and strengthened our circle if we had representation from each one. So myself, I am from Bigani, which is about 2.5 hours south from Calgary, and I've been living in the city of Calgary for 15 years. 10, 12 of those years, I've been a practicing artist, and I haven't always felt like I was being represented or that I was being invited into a safe space. And so that took a toll on me as a person and as an individual, but also as a Blackfoot Nation member living in my own territory and feeling like I didn't belong here. And so it was really important that we share some of these experiences through the work that we're doing and that we're trying to lead and help to build better relationships, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to community, building respectful and reciprocal relationships with each of these communities. We understood that we need to bring in our elders and our knowledge keepers into this project, because they're essentially our teachers. They are our leaders. They're the ones that are going to provide us with the information and the knowledge that we need to develop this project that we're working towards. As people are starting to learn, a lot of our knowledge is passed down orally, and it's been passed down generation to generation. And so we want to keep that going. We want to keep our own holistic cultural methodologies of practice into play, into this current world that we live in, and so that we are leading our own stories, we're leading our history, because it hasn't always been told that way. And so through the work that we have done through the Indigenous Spiral is treaties. That was number one. Speaking about treaties, specifically treaty number 7, the signing of the treaty, who was there to sign treaty? There's a lot of misconceptions around exactly what is a treaty, and people will often think that it is a agreement of the past, but it is very well much current today, and a lot of people benefit, not just Indigenous people, but a lot of non-Indigenous people benefit from the treaties itself. So we wanted to play with that and but bring it in interactive, fun way where we can teach, some concrete concepts and ideologies about the people of Treaty 7 and who are they and where do they reside and what is the difference between each of these distinct nations. Those were some of the things that we wanted to bring forward. But we also understood that, yes, we are in Treaty 7. Yes, we have specific nations that are connected to Treaty number 7, but we also have this community of diverse community of Indigenous people that live here in the city of Calgary, and we didn't want to leave them out. We wanted to invite them into this project so that they can be a part of it because they also live here too. A lot of people, this is their home. This is where, this is where they were born. And so for us to say this isn't your hometown it's completely unacceptable. We can't do that if we want to remain a true inclusive group. So we have invited Indigenous artists within Treaty 7 who reside here to be a part of this Treaty 7 Trivial Game Walk. The title is a work in progress right now. That's sort of what we've called it. But through our work with USAY, originally this was supposed to be in person. We were going to do it sort of like Jeopardy, Family Feud, game style. But then we realized through COVID, we needed to shift if we wanted to keep that interactive component in place. And so when we started meeting with USAY in the earlier part of the year and getting them on board, they had presented us IndigiTrails, which I haven't personally gone to, but it is based on GPS coordinates and an app. And so each coordinate has a specific question or narration story that pertains to Treaty 7. And so people, as you're walking through this, you would go from coordinate to coordinate and you'd be posed with these questions about Treaty 7. And, and that's sort of that interactive piece. And in COVID times, it works really well because it stops people from gathering unless you're sort of within your cohort. But you can sort of do this at any given time. And so we are trying to, we've developed a list of themes that we wanted to work with within the artists and provide them with knowledge keepers of the area. One of the requirements is that they would read the true spirit and original intent of Treaty 7, because that is an oral, these are oral stories and knowledge stories that have been shared by our elders in our communities, and it's from an Indigenous perspective that isn't always shared throughout. It's often, somebody else is always telling our stories. So this gives us the opportunity to tell our story from our perspective, from our knowledge keepers who would then be included into all of this. And so we're trying to keep everything as based on community, working directly with the Indigenous people here in Mohkinstsis, and making sure that they have the proper access to knowledge and, to equipment, and, it goes beyond knowledge. It's the technical stuff. And so providing these to reduce as many barriers as we can. Another one of the big things was making sure that everybody got paid accordingly. We're paying all of the artists, paying our knowledge keepers every time we bring them in, and making sure that when we bring in knowledge keepers and elders into these spaces, that we're not tokenizing them and we're not bringing them into a space where we're creating an awkward situation for them. And so there's a lot of work that goes behind it when we work with our elders and knowledge keepers. And, and thankfully, we have some really amazing people within the Indigenous Spiral who already understand a lot of this work. So that too was part of, the success of this project, was making sure that we had people that understood the historical and colonial context of what has happened today. And, and it's been really tough, especially in September with back in May when the discovery of the 215, that was really hard on a lot of Indigenous people. And, so sometimes we're constantly re-traumatized. And so that's part of, the reasoning for our timelines, is because we also needed time to grieve collectively and individually in our own spaces and make ourselves feel safe, because this is very triggering work. And no matter where you are in your healing journey, it's still really hard to grasp sometimes. And so this is where we're at. We've identified some artists that are going to start the work. Yusei has been a huge part of this project and moving it forward, and as well as the other instigators. And we're hoping to unveil and launch the event in January. Well, we're not hoping. We will be We'll be unveiling the event in January, and then we'll be doing the grappling. But after January, this is the beauty about this project, is that it could live on for as long as it needs to, because it's in a digital space. There's no reason to tear down anything. It just stays within sort of the digital world, and so that's the beauty, that it can continue to live on, and hopefully people will use this as a tool to educate themselves, their families, their schools, their friends, but just a really fun and interactive way for us to share our truth about our home and our community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That was amazing. Good job. So we're going to move on to the Black Led Spiral, and I'm asking Wunmi to come and speak on that.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Calgary Arts Development Authority, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Wunmi Idowu. I'm the founder and director of Wezo Africa Music and Dance Theatre Incorporated. We've been around for 15 years, initially from Edmonton, but we moved to Calgary about 9 years ago. I'm originally from Lagos, Nigeria, West Africa, and I moved to Canada when I was 10. I'm also the Black Led Spiral coordinator. But this is really dear to me, this Black Arts Development Program, as it came from a situation of having a challenge and trying to find a solution for that challenge. In 2017, Wezo Africa Music and Dance Theatre created Unganisha. It was a Swahili word for connection, and what we basically wanted to do with that was to celebrate diversity in the African diaspora communities by creating supportive spaces, platforms, programming for diasporic community members that were impacted by complex realities of discrimination and racism. And the Unganisha Explore Connect dance production, which was also supported by Calgary Arts Development back in 2017, is a Black History Month production that focuses on dance genres that came from the African enslaved African that were brought to the US, Cuba, Caribbean, etc. And those art forms were created from trying to hold on to the dance of their heritage, their culture, their identity, and creating contemporary dance styles such as hip hop, jazz, etc. And we've been having success with this production for the past 5 years. And it was an amalgamation of a play that was written by a playwright. We also had local dancers perform 9 dance genres that focuses on the history, and also have the archival footages and documentaries to kind of tie it together so people can really see that we're not just making it up, that these art forms did come from enslaved Africans. So they already had that knowledge and that base and that vocabulary of dance before being stolen and brought overseas. So the production basically was an opportunity for us to be able to showcase the history of dance, because dance is my original artistic practice and I've been dancing since the age of 3, but also allow Black artists to be on stage, which was something that was missing in Calgary at the time that I came. I did not see Black representative on stage. I didn't see them in theaters. I didn't see them anywhere. So I wanted to create an opportunity with this organization to bring together this production as well as showcase amazing Black artists. The problem was that we could not find storytellers, and we could not find dancers, nor could we find actors that were Black. And that was an issue since 2017. And each time we did the production, we realized that we were still having the same issue. So in 2019, we decided to launch a story writing competition for the Black, African, and Caribbean communities. And we had a theme in 2019, and the theme was focused on discovery. We had 17 writers submit their applications. They were going to win $1,000 for the winner of the writing competition. And we got a winner out of 17 writers. Only 2 or 3 of the written documents were worthy of even being produced because of the lack of understanding, the lack of writing style, etc. And we saw that again in 2020 when we did the exact same competition to try to bring stories out from the diaspora of African artists. And that's the same issue we saw, 14 submissions, and only one person won $500. And the theme for that was rebirth. And at the time, we were wondering, why aren't their stories being shared? Because there's lack of training, there's lack of development of these artists. And then for the acting part of it too, we weren't able to find Black actors. Black actors that we did find, they were well used. They were always, being on stage. The theater company snatched them up, the film snatched them up. So we didn't have, other, emerging artists that would be able to be in this space and felt comfortable enough to be able to be in a production of 90 minutes long acting. So we decided the Black Arts Development Program was the next step. The Black Arts Development Program consists of 6 sections that focus on theater, film for scriptwriters and actors, dance, visual arts, media, and music. And the 2 primary components of the Black Arts Development Program are training and mentorship. The program was created and designed with Black artists in mind by providing emerging and pre-professional artists the tools and practical knowledge to take the next step in their artistic journey, centering an environment where African, Caribbean, and Black diaspora culture can thrive and flourish in Calgary. So we partnered up with various arts organizations, institutions, universities, and businesses in Calgary for this project to address the structural changes and reform old systems to move to a place of renewed support that will help contribute to the thriving presence of Black theater, Black film, Black dance, Black media, Black music, and Black visual arts in Calgary. Can you go to the next slide, please? We have just concluded the theater and film.
Wunmi, excuse me.
Yes.
Could I just ask you to speak a little bit more slowly?
Oh, sure.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Can I go to the next slide, please? Thank you. We have concluded the theater and film section of the program, which focused on script writing and actors training of 33 African, Caribbean, and Black artists aged 18 and above virtually, all online. The Black Arts Development Program teamed up with award-winning professionals who are instructors such as Fiona Clark, Janelle Cooper from Toronto, Cheryl Fogo, Omata Adalo from Calgary, and Jesse Lipscomb from Edmonton for the 6 weeks, 18-hour script writing and actors workshop. Next slide, please. The Black Arts Development Program workshop began in June and ended in September 2021. The actors workshop focused on techniques of acting, including action, dialogue, and character development, managing the strategies, and developing the skills necessary for stage actors with an introduction to acting on screen. The script writing workshop focused on developing the skills necessary for a playwright with an introduction to script writing. And at the end of the script writing workshop, the 2 cohorts produced a 10 minutes play, 20 in total, all based on the unifying theme of the Black experience. It is intended that these plays will be pitched and produced in collaboration with theater organization locally based here in Mohkinstsis, using actors and script writers who are predominantly from the acting workshop. The program was free for the participants, and the successful applicants were also required to pay $100 refundable commitment fee, and that was returned to them once they completed the program. The selected participants received $500. A total of $16,500 was dispensed into the pockets of these Black artists for successfully completing the program. Through this training and the creative process, Black lived experience were acknowledged and empowered. In addition, Black Calgarian voices were able to shape the narratives and representation of Black Calgarians. We also started connecting with theater companies and organizations in Calgary, Edmonton, and Lethbridge who had publicly committed to 3550 initiative. As of November 20th, 2021, we'll be hosting a networking mixer that would introduce all 33 participants of the Black Arts Development Program to all these other networks. We have created an opportunity to both cohort instructors, theater professionals from various theater organizations in Calgary, and acting agents from the film industry to network with each other. Next slide, please. They will have the opportunity to ask questions, to pitch their scripts, engage with one another and with other professional Black artists to provide guidance about the arts sector. We will also have networking activities in music and authentic African and Caribbean cuisine to go along with the networking events. We have also started planning for the dance section of the Black Arts Development Program. The dance workshop will invite 5 guest artists who are instructors to lead 3 weeks dance intensives for 40 African, Caribbean, and Black participants ranging from the age of 5 and over in July 2022. These instructors will be traveling from Africa, Ethiopia, and South Africa. They'll be coming from the US, Denver, and Washington, and also will have the tap dancer from Calgary, bringing over 20 years of experience to diasporic forms to the Black artists here in Calgary that do not have the access. The Black Arts Development Program training incentive is free, with added incentives of honorarium to the 20 youth participants who will receive $50 each and 20 adult participants who will receive $200 each. And we want to thank Calgary Arts Development for being able to fund the Black Arts Development Program dance component. Our point is to continue to encourage Calgarians to critically evaluate their consumption of performing arts, media, imagery, and messages with the aim of identifying and dismantling decisive stereotypes, breaking down cultural barriers, and promoting more inclusivity across all aspects of social living in this city. Next slide, please. So the question is, how do we create an anti-racism Calgary? Anti-Black racism has been detrimental and impactful in our lives and in the workplace here in Calgary. Many people are angry and frustrated. Aside from dealing with COVID-19, the city continues to grapple with racism and anti-Blackness. A critical part of disrupting and dismantling anti-Blackness is a recognition that the problem exists with systematic foundations in colonialism, white supremacy, and racism. We need to also confront the issues by pursuing anti-oppression, anti-racism, and cultural competency training. Look at each structure and system individually. Think about how anti-Black racism is inhibited in each system, and then ask yourself what you are doing to actively disrupt these systems. How does anti-Blackness lurk into your workplace? Are Black people being hired, paid, promoted at the comparable rates as their counterparts? If not, how can you advocate for those changes? Who are the policymakers within the organization? I believe using the power and privilege to push for change is the way to make an anti-racist Calgary. Black people have lived through emotional, mental, and physical abuse far too long. Fewer Black-led stories get told, and when they are told, these projects have been constantly underfunded and undervalued. The Black Arts Development Program built intercultural relations, trust and understanding, and also challenged racism, hate, and systemic barriers. The 3550 initiative with a commitment is an actionable plan, and we're utilizing that initiative to be able to bring forth Black, African, and Caribbean artists who are theater and script writers, as well as actors, to be able to be seen and assist them with using what they have learned from the Black Arts Development Program into their professional system that has been already created in the arts sector. I'm going to move it to Priscilla, who is going to finish the presentation, but I would like you to go to slide number 20, please. Priscilla?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Priscilla. I'm the project coordinator for the Black Arts Development Program. I'm the first point of contact for delivering the BAD program or questions about the program as a whole. I'm also part of the Cultural Instigators, as well. I'm a spoken artist here in Calgary. I've been living here in Calgary for 22 years. I'm originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So the challenges and the obstacles that we face creating this program, essentially, we had no references for this program. You add on the pandemic, we have to shift from a in-person learning experience to an online workshop. We had to figure out the technical side of it, of having the program online. How long would it be? How many hours? How many students would we have in each class? The learning outcome, creating the course outline. And because this is an emerging process, there was a lot of obstacles we had to face. The initial stages, we did a lot of research and ongoing meetings with arts organization focused on developing Black scripts and writers such as the NIA Center and the Black TV and Film Collective. meetings with Black-owned arts organization as well, Obsidian Theater, Be Current, and Soul Pepper for support in strategic planning and mentorship. We faced the challenge of finding Black actors and script writers that were experienced in teaching students. The program needed to have 2 substitute teachers available. However, we weren't able to find a second one in Calgary. We had 2 of our teachers, they were from Toronto, and one of them we got in contact through the NIA Center, which was Fiona Clark. Another challenge that we faced is we had a deaf artist in our script writing workshop who expressed the importance of having a Black ASL interpreter to support her, since the space was solely for Black communities. That required research to find nationwide, because in Calgary, there was no Black ASL interpreters. So we had to search. Luckily, she had 2 preferences that were not from Calgary, and we were able to book, and they were there online with us for the 6 weeks. Next slide, please. So what did we learn? We learned that this program is something that has been lacking in our community for Black artists to experience and learn from other Black professional actors and script writers. Many applicants utter the same sentiments, such as the desire to learn from somebody that looks like them, the availability of the program in Calgary, and inexperienced artists who are eager to learn about acting and script writing, and the opportunity to learn from other artists as well who are on the same journey. Kushmar, and a participant of the Black Arts Development Program, Actors Workshop, auditioned and got a lead role from Smell the Coffee, a brand new Afro-Canadian TV situation comedy series. This series is working towards smashing negative Black stereotypes, celebrating positive truth and diverse culture while increased Black representation in Canadian entertainment. These are some of the quotes that we got from the applicant and some who finished the program. And I'm just going to read that out to you. The Black Arts Development Program is an amazing opportunity to not only flesh out my talents in a safe and controlled environment, but also meet actors who come from the same background as me and have encountered the same struggles that I have. This program is the best way for me to improve and in an environment with my peers, and not only grow as an actress, but as a human being as well. They have also gone further and taken the initiative to fill a gap of artists developed in the artists, especially in Canadian art space. It is difficult to find programs that speak to the Black experience. After completing the script writing workshop they provided this summer, I am happy to say that I've learned many valuable lessons from my peers and grew as a writer, as well as my ambition to positively share my culture as a Nigerian Canadian to enrich the collective Canadian art sphere. We had 49 submissions for the first cohort, and we were only able to accept 20 applicants for both workshops. Out of the 29 that did make the program, 9 of them were from other city or provinces. We had people from Ottawa, from Vancouver, a lot from Edmonton. We had 18 submissions for the second cohort as well, for ages 30 and over. Being part of this emerging strategy or process, we are seeing that people in our community are responding to us by letting us know that there is a desire to see these type of art programs available to them to help them develop as an artist and grow as an artist specifically in Calgary so that they stay in Calgary. Thank you very much. I will pass it on to the next person.
All right, thank you. Is that everything from the Black Led Spiral?
Yes, it is.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That was super rich and so full, and I love the positive feedback. And I'm going to move on now to the Racialized Led Spiral, which will be led by jaqs.
Hi, Jack speaking. I'm also going to have Pam Zhang come on in a minute, but so we're the third spiral, and I'm just going to read this to address the intersection of human rights and labor rights through multidisciplinary arts that speak to the culture of silence in racialized cultures and how that contributes to the lack of race-based data. This spiral came out of the discussion around how like initiatives such as like amazing ones that Action Dignity does, that Act to End Racism by Teresa Paul have activated in discovering the impact of racism on Asian communities, has doesn't have as much data on how Asian communities are being impacted, for a main reason because many of us don't feel comfortable reporting it. I think the way that immigration has shaped how we arrive as immigrants, my parents, other generations, people my age or younger, the way that migration shapes how Asian communities, Middle Eastern, North African, Latinx communities arrive are to seek out more possibility and more possibility in economic options. I'm going to speak from the Filipino community. Many people are often sending remittance home, so not wanting to disrupt that workflow and by speaking out against any racist acts that they may be subjected to within their workplace, where they are possibly in precarious work situations, contributes to the lack of race-based data. And again, this whole project is built around stolen lives, stolen labor, and stolen land. And how we get here is all about survival often. And that survival scarcity modality can shape how we navigate as advocates for ourselves and for those who are impacted by systemic racism. Even coming from colonized spaces, there's very little understanding of how we can disrupt systemic barriers. But I'm learning so much from the work that we've been doing, also the work that I've been doing with Cesar, Cala, and Marichu, Antonio, and friends, the Filipinos Rising groups who are constantly doing work to support the Filipino community where there are gaps that perhaps social services or governments may not be able to provide. So a main question that we arrived at was, of course, how do we build an anti-racist Calgary, and how do we disrupt our understandings of how we're even contributing to it? And we first wanted to recognize that the racialized led spiral is not a monolith. We needed to make sure that we had representation from groups that and be intentional. So we have folks from Asia, and MENA, and also Latinx. And we also just wanted to make sure that learning more about the depth of the differences that we have can also shape how we can navigate in a way that it's a bit more inclusive. So I'm gonna go to this first slide here. We shaped this project. We shaped this project with the idea that we would first have, our first meeting was in August. Our first meeting was in August. And we met with the 10 artists that are currently involved. Outdoors, of course, open space at Container. And that was the first time we ever were able to meet. That's probably my first meeting ever with people in person. And we're just getting to know each other at this point. And the next part of this project is to have storytelling and convening, learning and hearing from knowledge keepers. We're very lucky to have right now amazing people who are mentors of mine and mentors of my mentors. So Mary Chu Antonio, Teresa Wupa, and Amal Umar. We also have, for the artists, there is Alan Ozales, Monda Mahmood, Nurgle Rodriguez, Teresa Tam, Jaja Lee, Kara Bullock, Rosia Graham, and Sleeman Deep, as well as Pam, Zhang, and myself. And what we're looking to see happen with the storytelling is to ask those questions on how our knowledge keepers have navigated in the advocacy work that they've been doing as leaders of community, so that we can even have that's our research, part of the research, so that we have a context from Treaty 7 and also understand how they navigate their own lineage and relationship to land. And I think those are really important ways of being able to disrupt white supremacist culture, the ways that we navigate in these systems. So I think I don't know if Pam wants to add anything right now. That's my final thought for that. You want to say anything? Can't see you.
I'm here. Hi everyone, Pam Zen here, she, her, born in Wakkinsis, family from Sweet Potato Island, island named Taiwan. Yeah, I think one of the things which we'll probably touch on a little bit later possibly is also like in inviting wisdom keepers, knowledge keepers, is to create an opportunity where we could harvest some ideas for the creation of these capacity building projects for all the artists involved, and to really think about, because these knowledge keepers have so much wisdom around activism and different ways, like grassroots to more larger policy level work, that we would be able to begin to think about that as well as artists, like how as artists can we impact policy too. And it's a thread that may emerge as we go along. But jaqs, I can pass it back to you to speak about the rest unless you would like me to jump in. Let me know.
Thank you. jaqs speaking. Yeah, so the current issues that we're looking at within this large, diverse group of racialized people is that we're all impacted by racism in different ways. And learning about how that happens is by talking, by, of course, doing research, but also by getting to know people's lived experiences. And these conversations are instrumental and essential to how we're to build these initiatives that we're to pitch. So just going back to what the grappling, maybe I'll let Alan do that, but we're developing certain small projects either through pods of affinity, whether it's by certain interests, or by themes, or by discipline, and because we have writers, actors, musicians, visual artists, and there are multiple ways of how those combinations can become something. So learning about what we want to first share is probably going to be the big part of the next few months. And yeah, I think that being able to speak to those different experiences is how we're going to have to be able to learn more from each other. So I think we've also been quite siloed in many ways, which is why these cross-cultural discussions also illuminate some similarities in our experiences. I think erasure is one major part about the immigration process, of how languages don't necessarily translate from parents to children from in certain, well, I'll just say for my culture. But I think there's also ways of being able to nurture the new identities that we create while building relationships with the land here. For example, I'm working on a music project where I am blessed to work with 2 Blackfoot artists, and I'm learning more Blackfoot in Tagalog at this point, which is pretty awesome. And I feel very privileged to be in that space. So yeah, I think I don't like the idea of the cultural mosaic, because I think we develop our identities in a more cohesive and I guess community-based way, at least for myself. Pam, if you want to add anything to that. Final thought.
Jaqs, you beautifully described so much. And the only thing I can add is, or just bolster, is kind of the beauty to have like a communal exchange for this project, and that we're the way we've tried to envision it is that there is a lot of agency for the artist to let it come to fruition, like for it to take shape with the input and co-creation of the artists. And so, and embracing an emergent process, essentially. So there's a structure to which we get to gather around areas of concerns, areas of provocation, ideas of how we work together creatively to really make propositions at the end. And of course, that'll come later with the grappling. Yeah, I'll pause there, pass back to Jaqs.
Jaqs speaking. Thanks, Pam. So right now, we're the one obstacle is the scheduling of multiple artists, of course, but also the pandemic. It's taken a toll on many of us in different ways. So this is a photo of one of the same day of the first meeting. Some of us couldn't make it in person, and so we had a Zoom with a few artists. And I think the way to, this is clearly just an emergent process. So we have the major learn that we've taken from this is to have more time, as much time as possible when you create a project where you have multiple artists, and to have a space where people can show up in their fullest selves. So we are just working on and always learning on how to be more accessible. Did you want to add anything to that, Pam?
Yes, I agree. Like an emergent process requires time and space, and also a lot of care and like collective holding space. I think in the way that this spiral project is formed is trying to leave a lot of room for removing an expectation around an end product. That this is very much like an opportunity for artists to research, because it's really, if I say like capacity building, which is meaning like oftentimes as an artist, like, okay, I have 40 hours to make something that's going to be viable to be presented to other stakeholders or folks who want to invest it. And it's actually like, how do we kind of take away that pressure and leave room for process and unknown and discovery? I think that's coming through in terms of the nature of the project. Another challenge, I think, that we did encounter, but I think that we've come to, is that when we initially proposed this project, we went from a shift of broader community participants, of and artists, and then moving towards the desire to work with wisdom keepers. And the reason in part is also a desire to have a generational exchange, to be able to have a passing down of knowledge, because it is an acknowledgement of the history of what has transpired in the past that we can actually move forward and not only take those lessons, but hopefully like derive new ways of doing things. So I know for myself as an artist, unraveling kind of this like the kind of like habitual need to like have to deliver something in a specific way, which is usually in context like in a white colonial like gaze, that it takes time, and to be able to convene with a bunch of other artists of color and not have that in that space, or to be able to understand and see where that lands, and create from a place without explanation is a big thing. And I think that's something that we'll be learning, and hopefully offer some heartening creativity, like to like lift the heart as a racialized artist too. Final thought there.
Thanks, Pam. Jack speaking. I absolutely agree with learning from the intergenerational experiences, cross like first gen, second gen, because I think we have different spaces to learn about learn about decolonization. I think it's a privilege for me to be able to do that, because I'm not in survival mode, that like where there was a mission to take care of my parents, as my parents had to do when they moved here. And I think, like, for example, I just watched this film by Elamaya Tailfeathers called Gimabibitsin, The Meaning of Empathy. And I think empathy it will play a large role in how we will navigate building an anti-racist space, building anti-racist spaces, period. First for ourselves, in grappling how we heal from our own trauma of colonization, and also how we move forward as settlers here in Mohkinstsis on Treaty 7, and understanding what treaty means, understanding how we're all living in some sort of like subtype of dissociative PTSD if we can walk past a human being on the street who we're supposed to be afraid of, who's like passed out. I think we need to be able to learn, at least for myself, I just got my, you can get naloxone training at, it's very easy to do. So I think this is an aside note. I think all of the work that the Cultural Instigators are doing, including like hosting a screening, including the game show, including the Black Led Spiral, we're learning so much about how to disrupt what we've been programmed to understand through what's been accessible to us as education, whether it's through church, whether it's through family, whether it's through even the institution of education. I think constantly asking the question of what is this moment asking of us is how it will reshape what do I know now, how did I learn that, and how we move forward in creating, or at least disrupting, systemic barriers. So I think I'm hoping that these discussions that come from the artists and the knowledge keepers will, I know they'll lead to very, very healing conversations and also difficult conversations. And so, which is also why many of the spirals have also built in trauma-informed care or radical fund into their budgets so that there is care available should it be needed by any of the artists, any of the knowledge keepers, anybody involved in the building of these conversations. Doing anti-racist work is disrupting the narrative that we have continually carried and awakening to an idea that I'm not the center of every narrative. So, and that's also sometimes different for BIPOC people to actually say, I'm gonna take up space. So a Black, Indigenous, racialized people, Kelly's reminded me before, she doesn't like that term, and I agree with her. So I think recognizing everybody's humanity and being able to move with Gimabitsin is how I hope that we can learn from each other. That's my final thought. And if you have anything to add, Kelly, Pam, please do.
No, I think I'm good. There's a bunch of logistical stuff that I could share around, like, oh, artists going to work for about 40 hours in the research, and then they're going to get to reconvene and share what has transpired from the pods that they worked together on, and then get to share at the later grappling, which Alan will be talking about. So that's a quick overview, but I think we got to it. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. That was really well said. Well done. I think you touched on a lot of the things that we were going to also try to talk about in regards to, like, what I'm hearing from each presentation is that I think the most important thing for this project is that we all feel like we're like-minded and that we share these truths, right? And these truths are are either what made us, or is what we're currently going through, or it's what we hope to address in the near future. And I like the fact that this whole project is non-hierarchical. Like, we have the people who, you know, started, we have people who brought people in, but it's a non-hierarchical structure. So that means that there's no sort of like pyramid sort of like way of like, there's no boss over me breathing down my neck telling me that I'm not allowed to say the things I'm allowed to say. I think that's really important, and that's sort of like, yeah. And then also that, you know, it's an open discussion always, and it's a safe space for that open discussion, which is yeah, super powerful. And I think the stolen land, stolen lives, stolen labor is something that Cesar was actually speaking about. I'm not sure, is Cesar here? Would he like to just speak on that right now? That would be awesome before we get into the grappling. I can't really see if he's here or not.
I'm here, but my audio, my video is off, sorry.
Oh, no problem. Would you like to just speak about that sort of thing if we wanted?
Well, I think the discussions that we've had during the chat and choose, and also subsequent conversations on really understanding the kind of the historical roots of racism, because we need to understand what it is based on, and that it persists and festers to this day. So we really landed on collectively on this kind of statement that racism in Mohkinstsis in Canada is based on stolen land of Indigenous communities, of stolen lives, and we see that evidence and more of evidence of that happening. And stolen labor talks about the histories of coming to this place based on the needs of colonial economy for labor. So subsequent immigration of people of color, and excluded communities, which to this day persists. So stating that it's not just historical, but also current. Thank you. My final thoughts.
Thank you. I also wanted to, like, something that's been coming to my mind was that, you know, we're just talking about anti-racism. This is not addressing the, you know, I find like, not that we're only talking about that, but I'm just saying like, this is sort of groundwork for the larger discussion, like what sort of our survival in the future. That's all I think about, is how, you know, food resources will run out, water will run out, especially if oil companies continue to ruin our water supply, and like companies like Nestle continue to steal water from people. So I'm just like, you know, this is the groundwork for community work and sort of community sustainability for our future and for our survival. That is constantly what I'm thinking of as a mother, as an Indigenous person. And yeah, the stolen land, stolen lives, stolen labor very much has to do with the residential school findings recently. And I just want to note that as an Indigenous woman, I've been asked from people of settler descent or people of migrant descent have asked me like, well, you speak about this, what do you want? Like, what is it that Indigenous people want? And I find it really disrespectful, because I'm like, first of all, we're still in grief mode. I feel like I'm 24/7 in a mode where I'm whether dealing with my grief, reflecting on my grief, and working towards healing my grief in regards. And if we're constantly, you know, with the news of all these findings of these babies in the unmarked graves, I don't know what I want, you know, like, stop asking me that. And why don't you ask your government what they want and what they're doing to address this intense issue for Indigenous people right now, ongoing, you know, like there are still reserves who have no clean water, who have to ship in water, who are on welfare. They have no budget for water. Like, these are the issues. Yeah, so I just wanted to sort of add that, but we'll move into the grappling part. And I wanted to invite Alan to speak on sort of like, what's next? What are our next steps for this project? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Brent Rosales. My pronouns are he, him. I identify as Filipinx. My parents came to Canada in the 1960s and in the 1970s from the Philippines. I was born in Mohkinstsis, Calgary, at the Holy Cross Hospital. I've lived in this city almost all of my life. I'm an artist, and I have a master's in art therapy from Concordia University. My artist practice includes drawing, photography, poetry, and murals. I'm very, very excited and honored to be the overarching spiral coordinator for all three spirals. And one of my responsibilities is to support all three spirals around the grappling gathering event, which is tentatively set at the end of May. We're still looking at venues, and very soon we're hoping to book, so we'll have more news on that soon. So that is from the Indigenous Led Spiral, the Black Led Spiral, and the Racialized Spiral. They will bring forth at that event what they want to share with the broader community and pitch what's next. As you've heard this afternoon, there are so many ideas, thoughts, and feelings that have been percolating over all of this time. Again, the centralizing theme of this event is, again, the focus on stolen land, stolen lives, and stolen labor. We will also be inviting community organizations, funding institutions, arts programming, educators, politicians, and others on the basis that they commit to supporting the work that we are doing and taking action. I don't have much to share with you at this time because we're still in the early phases of planning of this event, but looking forward to sharing more with you as time goes on. That's my final thought. And if anybody else wants to speak to the grappling event, please do so. Thank you. That's my final thought.
Thank you so much. All right, I think if I'll just leave it out. Is anyone in the project want to speak any last words before we go into questioning? So we do have time for question and answers. So just putting it out there. Does anyone else have anything else to say? Final thoughts before we move into questions?
This is Pam speaking. I might just add one thought around the grappling and just some takeaways and learnings that we had in even the conceiving of that for this project. Was that we wanted to make sure there was an opportunity to, for each of the spirals, to be able to engage with the broader community, though each spiral project already does in different ways. And that a way to do a conference that's not a conference, like unconference it all, and really center folks who are already interested doing the work of anti-racism and believe in that kind of future for Calgary and the arts. And that some of that looks in many ways as, just speaking a little bit about the pitches, is that the artists of each spiral being able to share what they'd like to share, but also that there is the potential of investment, whether that's resource, time, relational, to be able to move things forwards, because that it's not a project that ends simply with the timeline and the activities in which we do now, but as like a capacity building project, as something that will continue on into the future. Those are my final thoughts. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. All right, and I would like to invite Jasmine Piper. Apologies. She is the coordinator, or the main coordinator for the Indigenous Led Spiral, and she would like to announce our social media. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jasmine, and I work as the Indigenous coordinator, as well as starting to work for social, our social coordinator roles for our Instagram. I just want to introduce our Instagram. The link is in the chat now. So there you will be able to see announcements and updates of our projects, as well as calls to community action and more about our programming. Feel free to follow us there. And I would like to thank everyone for being here today and listening to everyone's stories and truths. And yes, thank you, and follow at Cultural Instigators on Instagram. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I guess now, without further ado, we'll go into questions. Are there any questions for anybody, any sort of cultural instigators, or any questions directly for any spiral or the project as a whole?
Riel, I have a question. If maybe we can get the conversation starting and see if others may want to put something inside their inside the chat box. It's Patty here. And I think that what you're describing is really extraordinary and quite distinct. And I've really welcomed the descriptions from each of the spiral members about the ways in which you structured the approach and the work specific to the spirals and how you worked around that. As a funder, I know that your application was not necessarily a conventional one. And so as a result of that, I wondered what your conversations with funders were as they tried to really understand a very different way and approach from what we would have normally seen in applications prior. That's my final thought.
If anyone wants to take that on, I was not directly involved with that, so.
I could jump in on this, and if Cesar wants to also jump in on this, and anyone, there was a few of us who, so from the Chat and Choose in the summer of 2020, the Anti-Racism Capacity Building Fund from the City of Calgary came out, and we kind of decided to jump on writing, putting one in and encouraging lots of other Chat and Chew folks and communities to apply. In part, I think as a effort to see the need for this that kind of funding, but also as provocations. And that's kind of, I think, a little bit of an approach that we took in our grant to knowing that when we wrote it, we'd be offering something that they would never expect and probably have a hard time wrapping their head around how do we fund this and keep some kind of fiscal liability like to ensure. And we're lucky we have partners, fiduciary partners, like Chuck jumped on board right off the bat, and Inside Out and Stride, who were kind of like our first kind of cheerleaders and being willing to have their organizations represent us, be on behalf of us. And that Cesar and JD were really instrumental in helping the framing of these grants, especially with their experience around community organizing, because I would say that a lot of us are growing in our community organizing selves. At least I would say that for myself, and that we've gotten to learn that through also that exchange with JD and Cesar and each other. And then once we got the City of Calgary grant in, like specifically the City of Calgary asked for how is this going to impact policy? Like there's specific questions in which like a grant is framed. And I think how questions are asked, and we have to really wonder about how do we answer this in the most honest and authentic way, and yet make it accessible to them. And that was the most evident in the City of Calgary one. And so hopefully there were a lot of learnings, and we believe that exchange was there even as we submit a midterm report, and have spoken with the City of Calgary. And then the Calgary Foundation, from there we were able to bolster to Calgary Foundation and then to Canada Council for the Arts. And what happened is the project kind of grew, like that we needed more funds for coordinators. Like this work is like endless. Actually, this project, if we could have a full-time coordinators and pay really good wages with benefits, that would be the ideal, right? But we were able to ask for the sector innovation grant from Canada Council, and that really helped push us to be able to realize this to this kind of scope, I think. And it's something that at the end of when we submit our reports, I imagine that we're going to be able to offer some insights, like further insights around what were the barriers to even applying or to even writing out these project grants. I don't know if anyone else, if that answers your thoughts, Patty, but Cesar might be able to jump in, or jaqs or Wunmi, because also instrumental in writing up the grants. Final thoughts.
Cesar here, maybe just to add a little bit. I think my role and JD's role is really more around translation. And so, because funders have certain languages that they use and touch points that they want to see in a project proposal, but at the same time, working very closely with artists from a kind of co-design and community organizing perspective. And so sometimes those languages and those frameworks do not meet in a really creative and productive ways. And so what we did was, with the city of Calgary, we were upfront that this is the basis of the proposal. We talked about the idea of the spiral and providing support where it is most needed. And so we put that up front to the funders, and we said, this is not just a rhetoric, we are actually organizing the whole project around this framework. So we gave them at the kind of the beginning of the proposal, kind of to warn them, this is not a proposal that you usually see, and this is why, right? And this is why it is important that the proposal is structured this way. And so with the city, you don't actually have an interactive session with the city of Calgary. So our challenge was really putting within the word limits of the proposal a template and everything that we wanted to say. And also, like, contact person, we said we have several across the different spirals, right? The Calgary Foundation had with them, we had more opportunity to talk more about the project. And so they actually summoned a few of their community volunteers who were really curious of what this project was all about, right? And so we did have more chance to talk about what this project is. It's not just, and we keep on saying project, but we said also, this is not a project as a kind of in the traditional sense of the word. It's an artist-led initiative, right? And there are some project components to it, but as an initiative, it is quite open-ended. So there's the challenge between the open-endedness of co-design community organizing and the kind of discrete things that a project is looking for. And so we needed to kind of thread and navigate through that. And we were quite surprised that we actually got funding to this level. Thanks. Final thoughts.
Thank you. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add, or can we move on to another question? Is there another question?
Jack speaking, if there isn't a question right now, I just wanted to add to something that you even said, Riel, about how this is a very flat organization where everybody has a say in all of the processes. I've been on boards before where, you know, somebody said, equity takes time. I don't want to do this. I'm like, yeah, equity takes time, which is why we have to prepare for that whenever you write anything like this. We used to call it the monster grant because it was designed to disrupt the funding structure of having to write multiple grants, so that where people usually give up before even starting to write a grant. So I think the funding process is part of why you know, the nonprofit industrial complex feeds itself in a way where we're always looking at scarcity. But if you have the money, I think this is something that Cesar always says, well, with grassroots organizing, sometimes we don't know what to do when we get the money. But because this group has done so much in our own pockets, I think we're constantly learning and building in beautiful ways. I think many of our funding partners rarely have to ask, who do I write back to? All 12 of us, please reply all to 12 people, and then you'll get an answer, because we don't want to leave anybody out of the loop. And it does take time. Equity that's how it works. It's about flattening hierarchies that we're consistently forced into. But sometimes you have to do it for the society registration, but then you operate another way. Right now, the Cultural Instigators are very much a free-moving group of people where we're fortunate to have these funders and partners who can take on the role of fiduciary sponsor or sign their name and co-write with us. But that's one of the things that's changed. Final thought.
I think one thing too about working with such a diverse group of people is that we, through getting to know each other and sharing our check-ins, which are really important to me. Like I think it's like sometimes it can take up to a half an hour for everyone to check in and say where they're at. And we are all doing so much in our communities. I'm so honored to be a part of this group. It's such a collective group of hardworking individuals who are not only doing this project, but other things in their communities and, like enriching every space that they go into. And I just feel really honored to be a part of this and to learn from everybody and to consistently contribute what I can, which is important. It's like we're here to contribute what you can. I find especially for an Indigenous person, there's a lot of barriers that we face daily, like institutionalized racism, everyday racism when you're going to the store, when you're shopping. So it's like, if I'm not feeling like, schooling or writing something is my strength is elsewhere. My strength is what I bring in different ways, and then other people are able, maybe who come from academic backgrounds, are able to take on that load, and that's like kind of what you find in community spaces is where are people's skills, where are people's strengths? And it's not about who has the best grades or who has, and especially we're very mindful of each other's workloads, and we're mindful of who takes on too much. And, we're there to be that reminder of like, hey, maybe you shouldn't take this on. We'll find someone else because you're at capacity. And this word is like, that word capacity is something that is thrown around a lot because of the work we all take on. That's all I wanted to add, was just that, it's free flowing. Yeah. And it's, you're empowered to input your skills wherever they are, right? Yeah, final thought on that. But if there's any more questions, I guess we'll answer more questions.
Thank you so much, everybody, for adding context to what we've discussed. My question has always been, what's next for the Cultural Instigators? What's next for the Bringing Power to Truth project? We open a can of worms that is impactful in creating equity-seeking community, their voices to be able to be heard, dismantling racism. But most grant funders will not fund the same grant applications because they see it as the same thing. So we've been talking about how to continue to do this work when we don't even know where the funding will come from. And we've impacted so many communities so far. It's kind of difficult to be able to just walk away from all the work we've already put forward. So that has been my question in terms of what to do next and how to continue this work. My final thought.
Jack speaking. I can speak to it in a certain way. JD and I have also been talking to co-op organizers to see how the Cultural Instigators can carry on after the Bringing Power to Truth project wraps up, because I think we all do great work. It's just a matter of finding ways to keep it sustainable. So yeah, after we are released from the umbilical cord of CADA, what next? But maybe perhaps seeing how we can grow this work. And yeah, that's all I have to say for that final thought.
Hi, it's Patty here from CADA. I'm mindful that we've got about 4 minutes left on our scheduled time together. And that being said, Wunmi and Jackson and the other members of the Cultural Instigators, certainly what I've heard today and what I've observed throughout the year so far, has just been extraordinary. And I really do commend all of you for the work. And as many of you have already said, this work takes time. It takes a long time. And I don't know what is in store for you. I think that's for you to choose. But for what it's worth, I think we at Calgary Arts Development would certainly welcome a further conversation as you start to think about what those ideas could be, and see if there are ways that we can continue to be a partner in a meaningful way, and one that is in a good way as you articulate how you want to build those good relations among other communities. And I hope that conversations like this, maybe as you look to the grappling in May or other ways in which we might gather, I would encourage other organizations, work around EDIA shouldn't only be undertaken by IBPOC individuals and artists. And we know that in the arts community, as an example, there are many white-led, white-centered organizations that could be tremendous allies to the Cultural Instigators, like we have seen some of your partners who have served as fiscal managers and agents and those kinds of things. And it's my hope that we become a community that recognizes the need for organizations who are familiar with these colonial systems as they start to change, to learn from what you've proposed in your Power to Truth project, which I hope isn't ending anytime soon, and really think about their roles as allies. I know you've definitely provided food for thought for us at Calgary Arts Development, and and I can only speak for me, but my commitment to you will be to raise this conversation with my other funder colleagues at the provincial and federal levels as well. This is work that has to continue, and there are many across the country that are undertaking this kind of work in a variety of ways, and I think we need to pay attention to that as those of us who hold power and who hold the purse strings and who hold influence and all of those other things. So I again iterate my thanks to all of you for having the strength and the stick-to-itiveness to lead this work. And something I didn't say earlier that I just wanted to say in my wrap-up comments was, as much as you are teaching us and as much as I am learning, I am also mindful that with the systems we work in, there is a lot for us to unlearn. And I really think that your projects, in the variety of ways you've presented them, even in this short time, are really great food for thought for us, for all of us. So I don't know if there are any other questions, Riel. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. But certainly, if there are other questions that people have, we would entertain them. Otherwise, we will close our proceedings and give our cultural instigators time to continue work on their project. I don't see anything coming up in the chat, so I will extend my thanks on behalf of everybody to those of you who've joined us for this conversation. I hope there was good information that was shared, and I encourage those of you again who are in organizations who see yourself as allies or co-conspirators to reach out to the cultural instigators. There is lots you can do to help. To be allies, to be good allies, is much more than signing into a virtual town hall for a couple hours on a Wednesday or whatever day it is, Tuesday. So I really encourage you to reach out. If you have any questions for those of us at Calgary Arts Development, please do. We will undertake another town hall that we'll post through our newsletter on our website around disabilities justice. And so I hope that you will all join us for that. And I think that is all I had to share with all of you. So have a wonderful rest of the day. And I look forward to speaking with all of you again soon. Thanks so much. Bye.